You're a mum, you're a mum, you're a busy mum. Come listen to the Busy Mum podcast. Life hacks and inspiration for the busy modern mum.
Hi and welcome to the Busy Mum podcast. I am your host, Jackie DeCampo. This podcast's sole focus is to interview busy mums and sometimes dads that usually have a business or at the very least a bustling side hustle. We cover areas like why they got into business in the first place, what their greatest lessons are or fear is, and how to overcome that. We talk all things marketing, advertising, systems, processes, cash flow, which is my favorite part, whether they have a product-based business or a service-based business, and all things related to business. And also, we talk about how they manage it with a family life as well. A little bit about me. I'm 38 years old, married to Ben DeCampo. We have 2 daughters. I am a co-founder of Milkman Grooming Co. I host this podcast and I am a mad keen gardener. If you want to share your story, please reach out, or if you're interested in sponsoring an episode, again, please reach out. My packages are very reasonable. My email is thebusymumpodcast, that's M-U-M, podcast @gmail.com. Now let's dive into this bloody fantastic episode. So Alison, welcome to the Busy Mum podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your business, how you got started and what you specialise in?
So a little bit about me. I've got a beautiful husband. We've been together like 13 years, I think it is now, 14. I better check that before December. We've got 2 firecracker little boys. One's 5.5 and one's just turned 3. So they keep us on our toes. In terms of myself, I actually started my business after our first son. He was about a year old. And rather than going back after maternity leave to, the busy corporate world, I started my own business, and I've been doing that for 4.5 years now. So that's event management. It's Admire Events. Mm-hmm. So we obviously do event management, and we're just in the process of actually kind of changing our business model. A lot of the work that I've done has actually been in the not-for-profit sector. Mm-hmm. And I've found over the years that a lot of people can't afford necessarily an end-to-end business model with regard to event management in terms of having us do it for them, and just trying to remodel the business at the moment to find a way to support those people so that they can do it themselves with just a few touch points. So looking at kind of like online courses and just small increments of time that they can kind of be in contact with us and get feedback without us having to do the end-to-end that's quite expensive. Yeah. So that's kind of anybody who does, whether it's mums and they're doing fundraisers, not-for-profit, small business, essentially anybody that has to run an event on their own and supporting them a little bit. So I started that, 4.5 years ago. And then my husband is actually in business with my parents, and they do private building certifying as well. So we've got a good network, and my in-laws are property buyers. So there's a few people within the family that actually have their own business, which has been really helpful having young kids because we can all kind of juggle. So I actually just dropped my youngest to my mum and my husband in the office so that they can watch him while I do this podcast.
Oh,
and
that's fantastic.
Today to school this morning. And it's really, really good to be able to be a bit flexible with having small kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And life in general, you got to be a bit flexible. Yep. Like I was always told, you got to bend in the wind. If you're too rigid, like you'll just snap and break. So I got a couple of questions. What were you doing before you had kids? What was your corporate job?
It was still in event management. So I actually, when I left school, was a veterinary nurse, which is obviously completely unrelated, and there's no transferable skills between veterinary nursing and event management. But
people
I've been
skills.
People skills, yes, people skills, yeah, animal skills, people skills. And I've been doing events though for a couple of decades now. So that was just the first few years out of school that I was kind of a vet nurse. So I've been in events for a long time, both corporate, not-for-profit and government sort of stuff, outdoors and indoors. So I first started with like a tarmac car rally, fun run, cycles, all that sort of stuff. And I just got sick of getting wet. So I've moved indoors. I remember it was clearly one event. It was over in Perth. It was over a couple of kilometres of a beachfront, and they had torrential rain, record rain, and the shipping containers were underwater. We had to Greek government officials, standing in pools of water with my phone in a Ziploc bag because we were soaked through to our underwear, and I was like, that's it, I'm going indoors for a little while.
Oh my goodness.
So moved into the indoor kind of conferences, seminars, workshops, networking, awards nights sort of side of the industry.
Okay, and when you said to me, like, a lot of people can't afford that end-to-end kind of service, I immediately thought of, like, all the colleges and universities, how sometimes they're now going, oh, you can just do bespoke courses now, like do like 3 or 4 modules that like apply to what you need to learn about, rather than doing like, I don't know, a master's in something and like half the stuff you don't even use anymore. So at the moment,
that's a great analogy. I love that. I'll use that. Thank you.
That's okay. I can't remember the name of the college. It's like Australian Business College or something like that do it, and they have a good. I know I listen to ads in a different way. Like I don't get sold to. I'm like, ooh, that's a good offering. How can I bring that into my industry? So I'm always kind of looking out for different things and different ways people actually sell their product or service. So yeah. Now, so you're not doing end-to-end as much, is that right?
So I guess what we were going to offer is kind of a 3-tiered approach. So there's the do-it-yourself where you can just take like the material, some of the resources, some of the software recommendations and the learnings and just nut it out yourself with a bit of guidance from what we've already put online, then creating a done with you kind of model. So you can still utilize those templates, those processes, those software recommendations, but you can have some touch points with us. So that can be through kind of a group, going through as a small group through kind of the course. You can kind of purchase time that is just one-on-one, but it's limited in terms of you don't have to have us for a huge amount of time to help you get through that process, and offering where you can kind of take our templates, do it yourself and adjust it for your event, send us to us for feedback, and we'll give you feedback sort of thing. And then still doing the done for you model. So it will be done for you, done with you, and do it yourself.
Better off and do it yourself. No. Just jokes. So I've noticed in the marketplace as well, like there's a lot of mums in business, probably the last 5 years, like everyone seems to be an entrepreneur or business owner. It's kind of the way that the market is evolving now. And a lot of people, like say for instance, Kate Toon, I don't know if you know of Kate Toon, she's an SEO expert. She actually, and a copywriting expert, she does her own events called, I think one was called CopyCon.
Okay.
Which is an event. Is that something you would help? Is that kind of the client you're looking for, or is it more of a corporate type of client? Like,
it's, I guess, anybody who doesn't normally have access to an event manager, whether they can't afford to employ an event manager in-house or they can't afford to engage an event agency. So it's just not their normal core skill set. So they've got a genius zone in something else, and exactly like that, they need to put on an event for whatever reason, whether it's education, promotion, servicing a membership, raising funds. But they need to, for whatever reason, put together their own event, and they don't have currently access to an event manager to just ping ideas off, learn from, and help them through what can be often an overwhelming process.
I can imagine.
So it's just being able to service those people, and they don't necessarily need that level of engagement from an agency or to hire a staff member to be able to do it for them. It might be on that kind of a little bit smaller scale, still very important to them, but a little bit smaller, and they just want some touch points to be able to bounce off and have some guidance.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Do you do like wedding planning, or is that something like completely different?
It is, and I guess the base principles of the process is still going to be the same, but it's not an area that we kind of specialize in with regard to that. As I said, it's more kind of conferences, seminars, workshops, kind of your gala dinner, networking functions, those sort of indoor events, but not necessarily a wedding.
Okay. Another question I have for you is, like, over in the States, a really cool hip thing to do, especially like for Instagrammers or YouTubers, is to have a meetup. Is that something that you're looking into as well, helping people with their meetups, like a Facebook meetup or a YouTube meetup?
Yes, yeah. So you can, I guess you still got to apply the same principles in terms of looking at the event objectives, setting yourself some budgets, setting yourself some timeframes, marketing the event, going through the logistics, whether that's a technical logistics or a physical logistics of an event. So you can still apply those processes that you're going to step through, and the whole evaluation afterwards, the post-event kind of wrap up that often gets dropped off the end because we get so excited being at the event, we kind of forget about the wrap up at the end, but that can be kind of equally as important, especially if you're looking to run that event more than once.
Yep. So would you then always recommend, that people fill out like a feedback form or a critical analysis thing, or I'm not too sure what you call them, but do you try and always get something back from all the guests that have attended that event?
Yeah, so I guess it's looking at that whole package. So that at the beginning, we would have looked with setting objectives and like marketing and things like that. And a lot of people don't sit down at the end and kind of reevaluate what they planned at the beginning and where they ended up lying, both, financial, marketing, did we hit the goals and stuff like that, and mapping it out and leaving it as documentation, I think is really important. So kind of that hit by bus principle. If you ran the event and something happened to you, especially in the not-for-profit sector, we're kind of often churning through volunteers from one year to the next or one event to the next, leaving that kind of template of what happened so that somebody else can pick it up and build on it, that you're not starting each event from scratch. Also, post-event, just evaluating, yes, your delegate attendees from the event is super important, but all of the stakeholders and making sure that you're touching base with all of those, if that's face-to-face, through an evaluation form, whatever it might look like for your particular event. But sometimes they get a little bit left behind. They might get, logo placement at the event, some thanks at the event, but how do you sit down and evaluate with those stakeholders to make sure that you're keeping them engaged and bringing them back on board for the next time if it's going to be more than a one-off event. So it's that whole kind of wrap-up process. But yeah, delegate attendance feedback is always really crucial. You can do that on the day, you can do that online. There's apps that you can push it out during the event as well. But getting some level of feedback is always really good. Even if I'm a big fan of just even having a one question. Sometimes people create evaluations and they are quite lengthy. So I'd say like less than 10 questions, but even just one question. So what you can do is just ask them, based on their experience at the event, would they be likely to recommend it to somebody else? And just have a scale of kind of 1 to 10. And if you're capturing who's saying like those 9s and 10s, then follow up with those people to get more detail about why they loved it. And if it's on the lower scale, follow up with those people separately who have problems and just get some feedback from them. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a big, lengthy one. You can kind of just have one question and then automate that process after that to follow up with the people based on what they selected.
Yeah, I find that even with salesy calls and stuff like that, the follow-up is so important. If you don't follow up, there's a lot of money that's left on the table by not following up. So I think follow-up is really, really important. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question I have. What kind of apps do you use in your events management business, and what can't you live without?
Apps for event management or for the business, or both?
Both, yeah, both actually.
Both?
Yeah.
Look, I guess maybe not necessarily apps, but there's a few programs for me personally in terms of in business. We're on Office 365, and I love that as a suite in terms of, the emails, but all the other programs that kind of come with that Office 365 suite to make business a bit easier. And you can just have, one good tip from the Office 365, which we've done, you can have your own individual email account. So I've got, Alison.Jack. And admire events. But then a lot of times, especially in small business, you might need to have multiple email addresses. So we've got email addresses kind of for the clients that we do the end-to-end event management for. We've got dedicated emails for their event. And then, you might have an accounts at your business, info at your business, whatever it is. But you can set up in Office 365 just one email address, have them all point to that one email address, and then put rules on that create almost like subfolders. So all the emails kind of go into the one email address, but it looks like, and you can manage the different folders, and everybody who has in your team, that Office 365 suite can access all of those emails. And then you can still send them out as if they're looking like they're going from the individual email address as well. But it saves you because you only have to pay for one Office 365 suite.
Very clever.
Instead of 10. So love Office 365. But yeah, some of the others are probably, like Zoom. I like the way that we've kind of got our voicemail system set up for us. I like Calendly in terms of booking meetings and appointments and stuff. We use Dropbox to be able to interact with some of our clients. Having a CRM database is crucial as well. I like, if you're looking for free tracking of your hours, My Hours.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one before.
myhours.com is free to be able to track different projects, but you can categorize it into projects so you can quickly see where you've spent your time and your money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's from a business perspective. I guess in terms of from an events perspective, something that's really kind of, I guess, come forward over the last few years, a lot of people engaged agencies to run their registration process for them. And that's become so accessible now to the public with platforms like Eventbrite and Try Bookings and things like that, where you can kind of go and manage your own event registrations, especially, for fairly simple kind of events, where you're just capturing really the person's details and payment.
And money.
So
I'll catch it.
Yeah, I think some of those platforms that have really come into the public sphere have just changed the game in terms of running your own event.
Yeah, I do have a friend who does cabaret, and she's so good at doing the cabaret, but it's such a learning curve for her to do the marketing of herself, to get onto social media, even to, I don't think she sells her own tickets. I think she's got someone else doing that, like the actual place where she's doing the cabaret. So I think the next step for her is to sign up to things like Eventbrite and kind of run it yourself, because then you can log in and go, I've sold 30 tickets, I've only got 20 to go, boom, instead of asking someone to do it and then waiting and just relying on other people to come back to you about that. So so I would say Eventbrite and Try Bookings and all of those platforms. The other good one that you can sign up to if you're looking for items for gifts bags and things like that, there's it's called Source Bottle. So Source Bottle is they put out requesting for people to either be experts in their field that they can be quoted, but they also put out calls for people who are looking to place products within gift bags. Yes, I've been on Source Bottle for a while now.
So Source Bottle is a good place if you're looking to source gifts and things like that for your event.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we've already gone through what you actually specialize in, and you have gone deep into that. So you said you're in the not-for-profit space and looking more towards probably more small business owners now. Is that what you're after, more of that kind of work?
Look, I think
indoors.
Yeah. Look, I think the process in terms of the do-it-yourself and done with you model applies to both not-for-profits and small business, being on tight budgets and conscious of what you're doing, and sometimes you just need to go it alone. Mm-hmm. So I think they kind of fall into the same category in some respects, being budget and just doing it themselves. So I guess it applies to either or, and both small business and not-for-profits are certainly running their own conferences and workshops, networking functions, awards nights and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, beautiful. And where do you get your business information from, and why do you get it from certain areas?
Look, I probably flood myself with too much information sometimes and get a bit overwhelmed in myself. There's, I guess, some networking groups and things I like to go. I obviously like to go to events myself. So I do like to go. You
got to practice what you preach.
Yeah, exactly. And look, and it's hard. I go into every event and I pick up stuff that I absolutely love and I put that in my memory bank of, do that one time. And then there's things that you go, that didn't execute quite as well as maybe what they were hoping it would, and pop that in my memory bank for the not to do.
Yeah, not to do.
Every time you attend an event is an opportunity to learn. So I do personally love attending events. Sometimes they're kind of just motivational, just being a busy mum and a business owner, you know, sometimes I just need that pep me up, let's keep going.
Absolutely, get the mojo back, you know.
Yeah,
Kick up the
exactly. So
bum.
sometimes it's motivational, and then other times it's about like the educational opportunity that I might be attending, being part of a few different both in-person networking events, but also online in terms of a few groups that are online. So I'm actually going to the Business Chicks 9 to Thrive Summit tomorrow.
Goodness, that will be crazy.
Yeah, I like Business Chicks, but there's, I guess, a few out there like with Mums and Co. and Mums Society. Shire Women is local to me, so getting out there in amongst those sorts of events, I find it really good. But I do love reading, although since having kids, I find that I tend to listen to books more often. I don't tend to absorb as much when I'm listening. So if it's a great book that I'm listening to, I double dip and buy the hard copy as well. But then I kind of power through the hard copy, mark it up, highlight it. Anybody who's a book lover would hate that, but mark it up. And but if it's, you know, if I've absorbed enough through the audio, I just leave it at that. But, you know, there's heaps of books out there. There's so many fantastic
I know. The book list you've given me, like I'm looking at it going, I think I've almost got or even heard of every single one of them. So How to Win Friends and Influence People, like that's such an old book. Like everyone should have read that. I haven't got the chapter 1 by Daniel Flynn, which is a co-founder of Thank You. Do you remember the details of that one?
What he talked about in the book?
Is it just his story of Thank You and how it got off the ground?
Yeah, but I guess for me, it was really motivational. He got knocked back so many times, and there was so many errors, so many costly errors that happened that you probably are unaware of when you look at the Thank You brand of where it is now.
Yeah.
So I really found that to be great. I actually heard Daniel speak at a big Business Chicks event, and he was really good, and that encouraged me to then buy the book and listen to that. Yeah.
I'm listening to Stretchy Black Pants at the moment, which is by Chip Wilson, the guy from Lululemon, and he tells us about his journey on how Lululemon was created. He created after his very first surf skate and something brand, and he actually had like $800,000 to start with, but now it's like $1 billion business or something ridiculous like that.
Yes.
So yeah, I really love listening to the business owners' stories and just go, oh, they actually have issues like we have issues, you know, like you kind of think, oh, thank goodness, like, you know, people make really costly mistakes and you think you're the only one making those silly mistakes, but everyone seems to be doing it.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely encouragement to just keep going forward. You know, you might be on the right path because everybody's been on this kind of wrong path before.
Yeah.
It is good to be able to just align with where they've been and how be encouraged that they've got to where they've got to, that they can actually make a book about it.
Yeah. And he was also saying like how he predicted quite a few different movements, like the mindfulness movement that everyone's kind of going towards with their meditation, and he took it to the board and they basically shut him off saying, nah, we're not going to do that in store. And then 2-3 years later it just exploded and he's just like, oh, you know, that could have doubled the business. So yeah, it's crazy. And another one that is sticking out for me here, you've got the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and that's basically the book that kicked everything off for us with our other business. So was this one of the first books you read?
You know what? Hold on.
Have you got it right there?
Yep. Just right here.
It's so good. It's like it's the book that kind of starts probably a lot of business ideas.
Yeah, and like, you know, this was one that I marked up.
I have no problem with marking up books at all. Like, I love books, but like I also want to implement the knowledge that's been given to me by those experts as well.
Yeah, so I actually was listening to the audio version of 4-Hour Workweek first, and in it he kind of referenced, and there's a couple of tables and stuff when you actually read the book, but there's a lot of websites and things like that he references and tools. So that's why I got the hard copy, because I was like, I don't remember that website that he just sent to me on an audio book. I need the actual book to go highlight and look at them and stuff like that.
There is also one more book that I want to mention, then I'll move on to the fun, quick questions. At the moment, I'm reading Profit First by a guy called Michael, I don't know, he calls himself Mike Motorbike, so I don't know, look that up on Google. And Profit First helps you set up all of your foundational accounts so you can manage your cash flow in your business better. So it's similar to if you've read The Barefoot Investor. So The Barefoot Investor does it for your personal finances, whereas Mike does it for your business cash flow. And those two books are like Bibles to me. Like, I love them so hardly. Like, so I'm like, oh my God. And like, I've listened to the books quite a few times. So if anyone is listening and gets a chance, download Audible, download all these books and just start listening, because like, you just become a smarter, wiser person.
Yeah, look, with The Barefoot Investor, I've downloaded it on my audio. I just haven't got to listening to it yet.
So good.
And we just had a family get together last week, and my husband's birthday we celebrated, and his mother gave him The Barefoot Investor, the actual physical book, not knowing that I'd already downloaded the audio. So it's now on both my audio and reading book.
He's actually done The Barefoot Families as well. So that teaches you how to teach your kids about money as well. So all those books are so fantastic. I love it. I'm getting, becoming a bit nerdy as I get older, I think.
It does. It happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like you start just learning because it's fun. Whereas at school, you're like, oh, I have to be here.
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Although my son only just started kindergarten and that hasn't set in yet. He's still enjoying school.
Oh, that's great. Wait till they hit year one. Okay, so what do you prefer and why? Vampire or werewolf?
Werewolf, as I said, used to be vet nurse, so love animals, even if, it's not a particularly nice one.
That's funny. Netflix or Stan?
I don't have either, and I've never watched it either. I don't have any paid TV.
Really? How did you manage that in today's society?
Oh, I don't know. And you know what? We're looking at making a lifestyle change later this year. And I said, how about we actually ditch the TV altogether and give that a go for a bit?
You know what? I wanted to, when I read your answer, I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then I wanted to raise another point that, the people at Google and the people at Apple and stuff like that, their families, I think the founders, their families don't have screens or anything in their houses because they just know how bad it is for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They reckon there's a prediction somewhere out there that it's like it's going to be like the next like addiction like smoking was. Like how smoking's really bad for you and sugar's really bad for you. Apparently the next thing is screens. Like we're all just going to be like, I know when I give my kids screens and then I take them off them, they turn into complete psychos because they're addicted to the screens. So like it's probably worse than sugar.
I ran an event, it must be like 18 months ago now, through one of the documentaries. It's called Screen Ages. Oh. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
I haven't.
It's a documentary called Screen Ages about exactly that. And yeah, we ran an event for Screen Ages. But it's just happened that way. We didn't kind of consciously decide that we were not, doing screens or anything. And we do screens in terms of I've got my mobile, we've still got an iPad, and it's hard to get away from screens. The boys didn't have too much of time. It was kind of a killer of time at restaurants and like doctors where they need to sit still for long periods of time, that they would have some screen time. But now going to school, that he's come home and there's like 2 applications that he needs to do part of his homework through on the iPad.
Screens. Yeah,
like okay, so yeah, it's definitely part of life, and I guess we've got to learn how to manage that as individuals ourselves and as parents. I know I get addicted to Facebook. I constantly take the app off and then I put it back on and then I take it off. And I put it back on because I find I get sucked in. Facebook is, I think, my weakness in terms of like those
scroll
sort of apps. Yeah, and the scroll, and you're like, and time goes by so quickly. So yeah, but I mean, initially it was not really a Netflix or a Stan or a Foxtel or anything. We were just like, we don't watch TV that much, especially since having kids. Like, I've watched more Thomas the Tank Engine in the last 5 years than anything else.
Oh, yeah, because you've still got free-to-air TV. See, we don't even have free-to-air TV. We've just got the paid stuff because we don't have a TV antenna attached to the house we're in. So, weird.
Well, we've only got free and DVDs, which is so old.
My kids do know what DVDs are. They don't know what tapes are. Final question, then I'll let you get on with your day. Do you prefer product-based business or a service-based business?
Look, I'm service-based, obviously, myself, so I think I can relate to service-based businesses a little bit better and some of those challenges that are unique to that. But then I always love a good product. I was at an event on Monday and got gifted a beautiful smelling candle, which I don't have with me right now. And I was like, oh, I love that. I love good quality products as well. But I can assimilate certainly with service-based businesses.
So with another question, sorry, that was right. Almost the last question. Then I had another one. With a service-based business, are you worried that you're just swapping time for money?
Yeah, look, it is a challenge with a service-based business, and whether you're swapping my time or you have staff and you're swapping their time so that you can get some time back, it is always a challenge, and trying to put a dollar value on that service as well is always a challenge. I personally, my least favourite part of my business and the service that we provide is having to pitch for business.
Yeah.
Just to justify. I know that we're good at what we do, but to be able to justify the amount that it takes in time and therefore dollars to do what we do and do it well, because you want to put your name to doing it well. That's something that you always kind of struggle with. But I think a lot of service-based businesses that I've seen are trying to change that business model. And I guess that's also part of what we're now offering, is moving away from just that trade of time for money.
Yeah.
As an exact ratio is making a service that is accessible, that's not necessarily draining on your time as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, well, Alison, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been very knowledgeable and a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Busy Mum podcast. Don't forget to let your friends know, and also subscribe to the iTunes channel, and also my socials if you want to see what I'm getting up to. A brand new episode is out every Monday morning, just like clockwork.